Now to Morgan McKay, who is on the phone, who was in the courtroom. Morgan, tell us everything. Walk us through what you saw. Donald Trump's seeing him for the first time. Morgan McKay on the phone now joining us again. She was in the courtroom. Morgan?
Yes, Stephen and Tasha, former President Donald Trump entered the courtroom a little after 2:30 today, and he entered a plea of not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Now, he's due back in court on December 4th. Now, his lawyers did say that they were hoping that he didn't have to appear, just citing the immense cost on the city that this entire arraignment has costed the city, with NYPD officers outside and just with all the media, just what a huge burden this has been on the city. But the judge said respectfully, while he understands that Trump still has to appear in court on December 4th. Now, the entire process lasted about an hour, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office went over a couple of issues that they saw could be arising in the next couple of months. The first one, of course, is Trump's rhetoric on social media. They said that he has posted a, quote, death and destruction if he was to be charged. They said he even referred to World War III. So they were asking that the judge consider placing a protective order, asking that he walk some of those statements back and make sure that he doesn't post such inflammatory comments. Now, the judge said that they aren't going to be doing any sort of gag order, but he did ask the defense and the prosecution to make sure that their witnesses know that they can't have immense rhetoric on social media, on TV interviews, and so forth. They were also worried about Joe Tacopina, Trump's lawyer. They said that he has a conflict of interest, saying that he at one point conferred with the adult film star Stormy Daniels, who is being referenced in this case, and that he almost took her case. Now, Tacopina said that he only reviewed evidence, one piece of paper that was sent to him when Stormy Daniels was trying to attain Tacopina as her lawyer. He said that everything that he saw is already in Daniels' book. So he said that it's already been public information. So the judge said he wasn't going to remove Tacopina as a lawyer, but he did tell Trump that if he wanted a new lawyer without a conflict of interest, he has a right to do so. And Trump acknowledged this and moved on. But besides that, the indictment itself is expected to be unsealed later today. And the defense has about 65 days to turn over any evidence that they might have. Natasha?
You know, and Morgan, it is interesting that you were actually in the courtroom. Of course, you could only jot down notes with pen and paper, right? Walk us through the process of how you got in there, what it was like being in there, how many people were in there with you. I think what a fascinating vantage point you had this afternoon.
Oh, exactly. So everyone had a color-coded card that they were allowed in. So the green card allowed you access into the same courtroom as Trump, and that was the one that people were standing outside in line since yesterday at 4 p.m. A lot of big media organizations were even paying journalist students to wait outside in this line to get inside to make sure they had this green card to be inside the courtroom with Trump. Then you had two overflow rooms. So you had a yellow card and a white card. I had a white card, so I was in one of the overflow rooms directly across from the courtroom that Trump was at. And security was tight. We had to go through two separate metal detectors. I would say there was about 30 cops on the 15th floor, just directing traffic. But they were very friendly. There was just an extreme amount of police presence in there, being very, very careful, checking. Even though I went through the metal detectors, they were still standing me down. They had dogs out there. You could hear the helicopters outside. And Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg entered the courtroom around 2:12, and he sat in the second row. So they had the entire front row of the courtroom where Trump was at cleared out for security purposes. And then in the aisle, for each aisle, there was a police officer standing in the aisle of each row facing the journalists that were sitting there. And that was something else. A representative of 20 media organizations also spoke at the beginning of the arraignment, asking for just increased transparency throughout this entire process. They said that they would hope that any discovery materials get handed over pretty quickly to news organizations, just in an effort of transparency, because, again, still cameras were only allowed in there for maybe 2 minutes, if that. They just came in very briefly after Trump sat down, took some pictures, and then they had to leave. So a lot of people are just really pushing for increased transparency throughout this entire process. They also mentioned how the lawyers testifying and Trump, when he was sitting down, he wasn't facing the journalists that were inside the room. So they were also talking about maybe moving some monitors around so you could see facial expressions throughout the trial when there is one. And they were also talking about, one more note there, that the trial, they are pushing for a trial beginning of January next year. This is what the defense, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is pushing for. The defense, on the other hand, Trump's lawyers, they were saying that they don't possibly want the beginning of next year. They're kind of looking for more of spring of 2024.
That's interesting, and we've got our legal expert on set. So already the next court date's 8 months from now, and from what Morgan just said, they're hoping to push it back further and further, gets closer to 2024.
Yeah, no, and I think, listen, the months to come is going to be a lot of work, right? A lot of work for the defense team and also a lot of work for prosecution in terms of what we're going to see in terms of the attack from the defense team. But yeah, this is already we have a substantial amount of time in the grand scheme of things between the arraignment date today and the next court date. But there's going to be a lot of work going on in the process, and there may be critical events related to these charges that we see regarding falsification of business records, 34 counts, 34 felony counts, in the way that the defense team is going to attack this. And of course, I keep talking about the defense team because we're talking about Donald Trump as the defendant, and their next moves are going to be all the more interesting than the prosecution, because the prosecution has their indictment. They have done their job in terms of getting an indictment. Now the ball's in the defense court in many ways. Right.